Welcome to another episode of the Riverside Chats series with the Union River Center for Innovation. My name is Tyler Bilodeau, and I have had the pleasure of working alongside the center as their account manager at Pulse Marketing Agency. Today, I'm sitting down with Janna Richards, Economic Development Director for the City of Ellsworth, who works extremely closely with the center through his ties to the city and assumes the title Director of the Center. While Janna was not one of the founding members of the Union River Center for Innovation, she has been a rock star in terms of putting the center on the map, allowing Maine entrepreneurs the opportunity to grow and scale their businesses effectively. Thanks for sitting down with me, Janna. Let's go ahead and dive in. So, first of all, tell us a little bit more about what your role entails at the center.
Sure. So I am the director of the center, as you said, which means I oversee operations and programming. So you can think of the Union River Center for Innovation as it's a standalone entity, even though it has quite a bit of significant ties to the city of Ellsworth. So from the operations standpoint, I ensure that this building that we're sitting in right now is maintained and enhanced for a good user experience. I also ensure that we provide both on-site and remote support to small businesses and entrepreneurs and other customers that might be trying to reach out to us. I make sure that we have good relationships and networking and partnerships locally, throughout the region, the state, and even further and beyond if that presents itself. One of the big synergies that I try to keep the momentum going is between the center and the city of Ellsworth, considering this is one of the programs that falls under the Economic Development Department. So that means educating the city council, other staff that helps support this center. And of course, working on advertising and promotions through the help of Pulse Marketing over the past few years, as well as reaching and searching for new funding sources for the center, since we are primarily grant-driven at this point in time. And then programming is the fun stuff. And that's where we work on, we have a business incubator program, an affiliate program, as well as a new graduate program. And without getting into the minute details on that, they basically are all programming to help small businesses and entrepreneurs scale and grow their companies, depending on where they are in their growth cycle. We also have a co-working space, as well as private office rentals and conference room rentals. So we review the market demands for that and scale appropriately here within the center to be able to accommodate. So a lot of program evaluation goes with programming, obviously, because we are always pivoting to meet the demands that we see. The center started in 2016, so it's still relatively new. And so, we're in operations and programming mode, and we're able to evaluate, get feedback, and sort of pivot based on the feedback that we get from people that have been using our programs. And then finally, two things. We have an educational series program. So in the past, we had something called the Dream Series. That was where we offered education series on different topics across the board that could be helpful to small businesses and entrepreneurs. So financing, legal, copyright, those types of things, marketing and advertising. And now here we are doing the Riverside Chats, which is another new program that we're rolling out to allow for new entrepreneurs to see what sort of resources are available to them and how they could be successful if they decide to reach out to us. And then we have to have the proper resources and tools to help these companies grow and scale. So that obviously is a challenge to be able to have resources on limited funding sources, but we've been very successful. We have an entrepreneur in residence, someone who is a veteran entrepreneur who has been very successful with his company, who then mentors other new small businesses and entrepreneurs. So there's a lot that happens here. And like I mentioned, there's this really unique connection between the city of Ellsworth and this center that I really don't know of any other model similar to it within the state of Maine, at least. And so in that role as economic development director, wearing my other hat, our ultimate goal that we're trying to achieve here is to grow businesses to the point that they're successful and then can go into the Ellsworth marketplace, if you will, and diversify the economy, take up space that potentially was vacant at one point in time, and also create jobs. So there's really this whole circle of life that happens between the center and then my other role with economic development in the city.
Yeah, it's great, all the services that you're able to provide here, and seeing, businesses go from literally, just one or two people and eventually growing to be able to graduate from the center and move on. We saw with Bub and Mother's growing away from the center and flourishing in the barbecue space. So it's really great getting the opportunity to have this right here in Ellsworth and having the space for Maine entrepreneurs to grow and flourish.
Absolutely, yeah. It's probably one of the more exciting parts of my job, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how did you get started at the center? I know that you came from the city of Ellsworth, but what kind of motivated you to really get started with the center?
So just like a little brief history. So the Union River Center for Innovation was created through a public-private partnership with the city. My predecessor, who held the role of economic development director, was Mickey Sumter, and she worked with the Ellsworth Business Development Corporation, which is a support group really for economic development in the city and this area just in general, to create this center from scratch, really. And through that planning, Mickey became the director of the center. And when Mickey was slated to retire in 2019, I actually came on as economic development director. And so there was almost like an 8-month period where I was able to shadow Mickey and work beside her here at the center to then assume the role as director 8 months later. So that's really how I got my start, was by becoming the economic development director for the city of Ellsworth, and then shadowing Mickey, who was really fundamental to helping find the center. So.
Yeah, I'm sure that 8-month period really helped you with kind of grasping the...
It wasn't long enough, to be honest with you. I mean, it was really like a crash course. And during that time, we were going after a really big grant. And so I realized right away, I was going to say this later on, but I should say it just up front. Like, the center is a startup. We help startups, we help other companies, but the center is a startup. So it was really a crash course in like, how do you take a startup and like figure out what the market demands are, bounce off of feedback, evaluate your programming, all of these things. And at that point in time, the center had only been in operation for like 2 years. So it was really very new, and we were learning a lot. And I can honestly say that this is probably the quickest I've learned on how to like function and assume this role. But, why not just dive right into it?
Yeah.
And I feel like the energy that surrounds this center is so vibrant that it's like I said, it's a really exciting part of my job. So.
That's great. What would you say is like the most rewarding part of your job?
Yeah. So, like I said, personally, I find this center to be more of like a think tank, and for entrepreneurial development and just small business collaboration and resources. It's definitely different from the atmosphere in City Hall. So I enjoy coming down here, being part of the collaborative culture that exists, helping enhance that collaborative culture down here. It reminds me of when I was in graduate school, where, you get like-minded people together to help problem solve. And that's sort of my wheelhouse and what I love. And so for me, this place is rewarding for myself personally. And then, I enjoy networking and brainstorming and partnering with other, we're really fortunate here in Downeast Maine. Yes, it's rural, but there is so much in terms of organizations and individuals who contribute to what we call, I know it's a buzzword that's being thrown around, but the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and it's real here in Downeast, Maine, all the way from, Washington County, Machias, we have partners up there, Beals Island, all the way down. So, including the island and Bar Harbor. So the area is buzzing and it's thriving. And so that's rewarding in itself, is to just be a part of that culture. And then also, I can't not say, with my economic development hat on again, seeing the Ellsworth economy diversified as a product of the work that this center does is very rewarding. And, like I said, this place is a hive. It's always buzzing. And what's makes it even better is when there's successes that come out of this center that we can visualize and see within the community of Ellsworth.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Is seeing all those businesses just, go back into the Ellsworth community has to be, like you said, extremely rewarding. So if there are any businesses out there that, you have an idea for a business, you're trying to think what your next steps are, if you either want to get funding or you're trying to figure out your marketing strategy, what pitch would you give those businesses if they're considering the Union River Center? What would you tell them to come here?
Sure. So we can be one of a small business or an entrepreneur's biggest assets, and like something that you could just take out of your back pocket. We will listen to your issues and your roadblocks and help you problem solve. We have staff here on hand, like I mentioned, the entrepreneur in residence, who is a seasoned entrepreneur that can help navigate some of the tricky waters that, it can be overwhelming and it can be a risk. And so I think that is one of the biggest roadblocks to actually moving forward with a small business or a startup company. And so just to know that there's somebody else there who you can problem solve with and bounce ideas off of is really reassuring and comforting. So there's that aspect. We have a vast network. So if we can't help you here internally, we can certainly make references and connections to other resources throughout the state. And then on top of all of that, if people do not have a place to operate their business at this point in time, and they want to be part of a more collaborative culture, then we have space here for private offices, co-working space that we would rent out to an individual, and that can we know that capital is one of the things that startups and small businesses are trying to control those costs. So we work with those individuals to try to get them the best rate here, and then over time, as they establish themselves, that can sort of move up to get to the point that they're back into the market. So that's the goal, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we're flexible. We understand the challenges that are out there for small businesses and entrepreneurs, and we try to be receptive to that, work with them, and then help them grow. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So you talk about those businesses kind of starting from the ground up and eventually graduating. There's two previous tenants that I wanted to bring up. We had Bub and Mud, as we mentioned recently. You can see on episode 1 of Riverside Chats, we sat down with their founder, John, and he gave some great insight as to how he started. It was kind of an unconventional route, and then he eventually found his way into the barbecue industry, the dry rub specifically, and hearing his stories were great. And then we also had the Genotyping Center of America. Very, very different.
Very different.
I think that's the beauty of having something like this in Maine, where you have people from all different kinds of backgrounds and different interests and expertise coming here with the goal of building their business. So with those two tenants kind of seeing their stories firsthand recently, what do you think that new tenants could learn from them? What do you think they did really well? What set them apart and allowed them to be able to graduate?
Sure. So definitely with both of those companies, they exhibited signs of perseverance, which is like, I think for an entrepreneur or startup, you need that. You have to have that drive and that energy like inherent to you. You certainly see it with John. If you watch that episode of Riverside Chats, you can see. And I believe he talks about a lot of that perseverance. And it's the same with GTCA, Genotyping Center for America. it started as what they would lovingly call a side hustle. And so when you have something else that's going on in your life, when you have, your personal life, your business life, your real job, and then the side hustle, you really need to be able to dedicate time and energy to that side hustle, even though you have everything else going on, to be able to actually see it through to fruition and grow. And both companies were able to successfully do that through that energy, dedication, and overall perseverance. I would say both companies are also hyper customer focused. So with John, you see Bub and Mothers being customer focused to not only his customers that are buying the product, but also to the retailers who he is trying to get his product into their stores. I think he talked about going up to Eastport and making the deliveries himself. That really shows that sign of, I'm a real human, I am personable, I'm dedicated to this. And with GTCA, same thing. They are really, that's what I think would set them, in their words, would set them aside from other companies, is that they're really devoted to their customer and their customer base, and getting feedback from that customer base. So I think that's really two critical traits from those two companies. The ability to persevere, again, not alone. They ask for help when they need it, right? So I think that's another piece of this is the awareness to know, I can't do everything myself. I'm going to have to find and network out and reach out to people that can help me. And then really being able to receive feedback from your customers and then pivot based on that feedback. So not afraid to switch up the business plan every now and then, go back to your business plan, see areas where you're getting feedback that maybe it's not working, and then change. So that ability to, I hate using the word pivot over and over again, but I really don't know any other word that, talks really that is essentially what they're doing. And that's what makes them successful in the end, is that they're able to reach that market that they're trying to reach and the customer they're trying to reach.
I think that's really special to have that dedication to be able to go from, your normal 9-to-5 job or whatever you have, and then go into a completely different business venture with the sole goal, even if it's slow to start, you have this dream of being able to launch it and being able to grow it. I think something I remember from John's interview is that, he said that, I could have just worked a 9-to-5, or I could have just stayed home and not done anything, but I had this passion for dry rub. And so that, led him to come here and grow his business and eventually, to the point of graduation. So I think that's really special. And I think the ability to persevere and know what you want and know that your customers are the number one priority is really key. What would you say is a specific example where you've seen a company grow and adapt to lots of different challenges? We've had, a lot of stuff happen in the past 3 years. What do you think is an example of that you'd want to highlight?
Yeah, so there's one company that comes to mind because the company has been within our program since this center opened, I want to say, 2016, 2017. And I've seen him go through waves up and down. And so I think he's a prime example of risk taking, right? So risk taking is not easy, especially, if this is your side hustle, then maybe risk taking is a little easier because you have something that's paying the bills. But if this is you're all in, it is not easy to take a risk because, you're starting out. And so, and the current economic conditions are, such that risk taking is also not as easy. So even still, I saw one of our companies toss around the idea for several years about entering the retail market. It was not an original part of the business plan that they were operating off of. And, he put so much time and energy into that concept. I want to say it was probably like a 2-year in the making thing. Wow. Yeah. And even still through COVID, still like pushed through wanting to enter that market, and found a funding source. We worked together to help find a funding source to sort of pilot that project. I saw that in the end, like the result was not 100% positive, right? Mm-hmm. He realized that it was probably not an area that he was going to shift into, which I see that honestly as growth, because he took the risk, took the step, implemented the step, and was then able to say, well, you know what? I tried it. I tried it.
From the mistake.
Exactly.
Or you learn from, past experiences like that.
Exactly. So he checked the box. It's like, I tried it. And what I thought was even cooler is that the Union River Center for Innovation could be a part of that, because if it was traditional out in the marketplace, he would have had to have probably signed a lease to be able to make that happen, would have paid market rate to be able to make that happen. And it was like an experiment. And so we worked as that experimental space, being flexible, low cost, to see if it would work or not. And we were part of that research and development, if you will. And so that to me shows that you have the courage, you took the risk, you realized that it wasn't the way that you were going to go, but at least you learned from it. And now you can go in another direction that would hopefully be more successful. So I thought that was, just to highlight something, like it's not always roses, it's not always going to be roses, but sometimes you need to learn from those mistakes. And we're here to help you navigate that.
Exactly. Yeah. Not always easy, but you learn from the hardest challenges that you're put up against.
That's right.
I think a big reason why the center is so successful is that you're in a community like Ellsworth, where it's very tight knit. Everyone kind of knows everyone, but you still have, the size to be able to house a lot of different businesses. Mm-hmm. How do you think that has impacted the center? Just having that tight-knit community of Ellsworth and kind of the greater Downeast area supporting you.
Yeah, so I think that being in Ellsworth allows us to have more dedication to the small business and entrepreneur community than you would see in like a big city. We have more time to handhold, if you will, to like really be there for small businesses and entrepreneurs at their call. And I think like in a bigger city, there's just so many startups that, you don't have that sort of face-to-face time or relationship with mentors like you would here in the center. And not only that, you have like this network of people in the community that are like your cheerleaders through all of it. And there is a genuine care and passion for not only this center, but for each of the individual companies and people that are associated with it. So I think, you don't get that personal interaction, if you will, so much in a bigger city than you do here in rural Maine. And also, there's no competition between the other partners. It's really all trying to be collaborative, because a success for us is a success for, let's say, Machias. So like we all want to be instrumental in pushing out good stories, good successes from this area of Maine to really put us on the map.
Yeah, so you have your own little community within the center, and that community is supported by the larger Downeast community.
That's right.
Just trying to help everyone grow. That's great to hear. I think a lot of times people can view business as, cutthroat and trying to be competitive and trying to only, benefit yourself. But I think, you have to accept that there's a larger community out there and accept help from people. And it's great to see everyone supporting these other businesses.
Yeah. Sorry, not to cut you off, but one other thing I would say too is that like within the walls of this center, we've seen collaboration between businesses too. So like we had someone here who was a 3D printer working with a biotech company because they needed their services. And so you see these relationships form here we also see the relationships form within the greater economy within Ellsworth itself too. So it's pretty cool to see those interactions happening.
Yeah. Do those happen like fairly naturally? Do you, like, if you come into the center, do you see people just kind of like open door policy kind of checking in, or what are some other times that you've seen that happen?
Yeah, so I would say both. I think, there's a sense of camaraderie within the center that's just natural and blossoming. But I would also say, like, during some of these meetings, if a small business or entrepreneur says to us, oh, this is my issue or my problem or my roadblock, then, the entrepreneur in residence or myself can step in and be like, I know someone who can help you, because we have the experience of working with a host of businesses throughout this area. So, and organizations that can step up and help a lot of times. So, I would say both. We want to continue to increase the opportunities for that openness and sharing throughout the center. That's its purpose. And before COVID, we definitely had a lot more of those interactions, but we plan on continuing with that here at the center as well.
That's great. Kind of circling back to what you started with, your background in economic development, wanting to grow the center. What are some of those goals you have for this year and even beyond with the center?
Yeah, so we always look at what our vacancy is, I suppose. And so, we always like to maintain between an 80 to 100% occupancy rate. 100% is obviously the great, but if not, somewhere between 80 and 100. And that's been fairly consistent, except during COVID when, people couldn't be out. That just always is the same. And then we'd like to, at least this year, onboard 2 new business incubator companies into our portfolio. We have one right now that we are working with to hopefully continue that application process so they can get into the program. We always want to maintain and enhance our network and our partnerships again, and come up with ideas potentially to collaborate either this year or into the future. So those are some short-term but also longer-term planning. Just like any other startup or small business, we want to become fully sustainable. So that's always a goal as well. And we have a short-term and then sort of a mid-range sustainability plan. So we are executing that now, and we will continue to do that. We always, just like any other business, refer to our business plan, and then particularly we're looking at who our market is, our current market, and if we should be growing or expanding that market or changing that market based on what the demands are currently out there in the marketplace. Yeah. And so, like I said, it's just important to note that we are just as much of a startup as any other business company that we work with. And so our goals are very similar to those of a new business or a new company, to just look at your business plan, go back to your business plan. Do you need to modify your business plan? That type of thing. Consistently, because, that's all about the sustainability piece too, is if you're reaching your market, then you should potentially become more sustainable over time.
So one thing that you mentioned, you were talking about at the application process to the center. And I just wanted to learn a little bit more about that, and maybe for the viewers out there, what that looks like if they have a business they're considering potentially bringing to the center, what they can expect from that process and what that looks like.
Sure. Yeah. So I think it's probably best if I just use an example from this latest business that reached out to us. They're new to Ellsworth and to Maine. They came here and moved here from California, and has at least 2 really good prime business ideas to move forward. So first reached out to me over at City Hall as Economic Development Director, saying, what sort of resources are available to me? And I immediately got very excited because I was like, oh my goodness, you could be a really great candidate to go into the business incubator program at the Union River Center for Innovation. So, of course, gave the whole rundown about what our programming is. And it started with a tour of the center and meeting with myself and the entrepreneur in residence here. What's even more exciting is that we have a community laboratory space here. So essentially, it is a fully outfitted laboratory for research and development. If you're in like the biotech or life sciences sectors, this individual would be kind of in the, I would say, biotech sciences. So he would certainly be utilizing that space. And so we wanted him to see it and then to see what sort of office availability we had here. And then once we knew that he was interested in the programming, we gave him a copy of the application that we have. It's really fairly straightforward. It's just asking about like what your business is, what the concept is, what your market is, what you foresee, like how you would utilize the center and where you see where you have challenges and where you would want resources to help with those challenges. That's when we know like this is a good fit because you're looking for help in areas that we can help you with. In the application process, I know people think it's kind of like a daunting thing, but we're here to help with that. If there's questions and things like that, we want you to succeed. And so then once we got the application, we review it and we have an advisory board as part of the center. And there's a subcommittee that helps vet new business incubator companies. So they will get together to review this application. If there's any questions, we reach out and essentially in the end, we make sure that it's a good fit for you and us. And then if it is, then we move forward and you become part of our program.
That's exciting.
Yeah. And the application isn't available online. We have it internally, but you can find out about all of our programming and even our space here online. We have a website. It's unionriverinnovation.com. We have all the various social media outlets. So Facebook, Twitter. Do we still have Twitter?
Yep.
Okay. Instagram, LinkedIn. So follow us. Even if you don't want to become part of the Business Incubator program, I still think that we feature some really cool content that if you're into what's going on in the small business world or the entrepreneurial world, both locally, but also like nationwide, what the trends are. I think we do a fairly decent job trying to promote that. We have email and a phone number that you can call us. You will actually reach a person. So
that's nice.
There is an 800 number, but you will talk to a human being. And then we have an email that will go to myself and to the entrepreneur in residence. So we make sure that those are replied to very quickly. And then you can always stop by. We're at 415 Water Street in Ellsworth, right by the Harbor Park.
We can see the water right outside.
Our doors open. There's typically people here all the time. And if we're not here, you can take a card and, reach out to us. So, there's so many ways to get in touch with us.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I just wanted to ask you if you had any final thoughts or any final things you wanted to say, push for the center.
Yeah, I mean, we're eager to help you, right? So don't hesitate to reach out, or even if you're remotely interested, just come check us out and see what's happening here. I know some people don't think they have the time, but we'll work with you. I think there's different variations that we can apply to across the board to, the person, the business. So we're here to help. That's our mission and our goal. And then I always like to end with a thank you to everyone who has ever supported the Union River Center for Innovation, because I don't want to forget anyone. So I just do this all-encompassing thank you. But it really does take a village. We're in rural Maine. Resources are tight. Everyone knows that. I wear 2 hats. Everyone wears 2 to 5 hats in this area. And so from, the Ellsworth Business Development Corporation, who helped get the center off the ground and running, to the advisory board, the funding sources that we've had throughout the state, the city council, like back in 2016 and all the reiterations since, the staff. I mean, everyone just really, this place is well loved. And so I have to thank everybody for all the help that they put in.
Great. Well, once again, we have Janna Richards, Director of Development and Director of the Center. And just wanted to give one last final push. If you want to learn more about the Union River Center for Innovation, you can follow them on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, or head down to their website at unionriverinnovation.com. Thank you so much, Janna. This has been great.
Thanks, Tyler.